All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for everybody that has joined us this morning for our quarterly webinar. I'm really excited today to be here with my friend Omar Kasim, and Omar is uh, really is the best definition of what an entrepreneur can be in terms of his passion, character, energy, and everything that he does in his businesses. So we want to really just have a good dialogue for about 30 minutes, get to know him a little bit better and really understand what characteristics drive him towards entrepreneurship and success. And then we will allow for about 15 minutes of Q&A if you guys have specific questions for Omar, and that portion of the webinar will not be recorded there at the end. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Omar. Omar, how are you today?
Just living the dream. How you doing?
Doing great, doing great. Well, hey, for those that may be watching or attending today that don't really know you yet, give us a little bit of information on your background. Where are you from, and how did you really get into business, and more importantly, maybe what was it that caused you to really have a passion for business, and how old were you when maybe that transformation took place?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Omar Kasim. I'm 27 years old. I came from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I actually came to Northwest Arkansas for the university. Knew nothing about Northwest Arkansas, let alone Fayetteville. Just came here solely because I got a good scholarship. And my first day on campus was actually orientation day. And I just remember going to campus and just thinking, you know what, I'm here. I better make the best of it and make sure that this was a great decision, because originally I was planning on going to my dream school, which was the University of Texas at Austin. And I just decided to come to the University of Arkansas mainly because of the scholarship and because it was still a really good business program. And that's about all I knew about it. My life in entrepreneurship started, from the day that I was born. My dad's an entrepreneur. My dad's dad is an entrepreneur. And so, I relate it to just how, growing up, some people go to extracurricular activities after school, like their parents play baseball or softball, and then they grew up playing baseball as a result of it. I grew up in a small business home. So after school, I was going to our family business. I would, on the weekends or whenever I wasn't in school, I was hanging out at our business, doing all kinds of different things, and then eventually, working in our family business. And so to me, entrepreneurship was a part of life. It never really was something that I grew to love. It just kind of seemed to be how life was to me. I didn't know that, people didn't, work like my dad and my mom did, or, that's just what I was around all the time. And so transitioning into college and into the real world, it's kind of what I know, and it's just because that's what I grew up around.
What family business were you guys involved in when you were growing up?
Oh, it's everything. I mean, my dad is a very opportunistic guy. He got his start in gas stations, and so he owned and operated some in not the best area of town, and eventually, bought land and bought more properties, and then eventually cycled out of that. He was involved in some restaurant stuff as well. His background was he was a district manager at Denny's when Denny's was Denny's. And so he got back into the food space, did some business consulting, got involved in construction because one of his friends knew that he had self-contracted a couple of projects and asked him if he could build, a multi-million-dollar medical facility. And he was like, sure, I can do that. And so he found out that, how that operated, started working with an architect, an engineer, and a developer, and realized that he could do it himself. And so really, it's just all different kinds of things. I mean, I could, fire out anything from like LED signs to, bringing, manufacturers from China to here. It's just anything that my dad, is like, I could do this myself. He would get his hands on. And so it was really difficult for me to say what my dad necessarily did. So I usually just relied on more of the restaurants and the gas station stuff because I was more customer facing.
That's great. Can you think of any particular instance maybe that, or any situation that you observed as you went after school or on the weekends? I'm sure a lot of your friends were going to, play baseball, basketball, whatever, and you're going to work essentially. Was there any really, defining moment you would say on something that you were like, you know what, I can add value here, and really had, a moment like that maybe? Is there anything like that you can put your finger on?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if this is necessarily what you're looking for, but there was a moment my mom was, in the trenches with my dad all throughout this. They used to, go to Mazio's and have dates because they offered free refills, and they couldn't afford anything else. And so she's been there from, from the moment that my dad, was a dishwasher to, where we're at today. And so having been through the trenches and have the battle scars of being an entrepreneur, my mom did not want me to be an entrepreneur. So she used to always tell me to do things like, hey, like you should be an architect, you love Legos, like be an architect. Oh, like you should be a dentist. You work from 8 to 5 and then you get weekends off. And I remember once she had mentioned to me that I should be a doctor. And there was, at that point, is the earliest that I can remember that in my mind, I couldn't see myself being anything else, was whenever my response to her was, well, Mom, I'd rather own the hospital than work in it. And and I just remember at that moment, that's like one of the moments that I can think like, is at an early age. I think my mom was like, yeah, I lost him. you know?
That's a good story. That's a good story. One of the things that I really appreciate you is that you always have a smile on your face. I mean, you're high energy, of course, but you're always in a good mood. It seems, at least on the outside. I mean, you always display a positive attitude. And I know the life of an entrepreneur is not always, glamorous, and you work all sorts of crazy hours and you can never turn it off. It's the blessing and the burden, I guess, that goes hand in hand. How do you maintain such a positive attitude, faced with all the daily challenges of owning multiple businesses?
Yeah, I think the first is that I'm very I acknowledge my present, my privilege. I like to think of myself of, most people think to themselves like, oh, I deserve to give myself a break. I deserve to do this. I deserve to have a day off. Um, the way that I think of it is, my parents did so much for me. They sacrificed so much. I come from a good home. I never had to worry about, food or shelter or anything like that. I had a great education. I went to a really good high school, and that allowed me to be able to get into a really good college. And even that, I was able to do as well as I did on the ACT because I was privileged enough to have parents that could afford to do ACT prep, And so the way that I see it is I have an investment in me. People have invested a lot in me. And so it's really difficult for me to complain about these little things here and there when I have so much privilege. And so I like to think, I'm always smiling, mainly because I'm like, well, the life that I'm living right now is a blessing. Like the reason why I go after the things that I have, and the reason why I live this riskier life in terms of entrepreneurship is because I have the privilege to be able to do it. I don't have, to worry about grandma and grandpa or mom and dad, about, helping pay their bills right now and things like that, or taking care of a loved one or something like that. And so I think that that's one is perspective. I think a lot of us really just complain way too much about a whole lot of things that are just really first world problems, And
Right.
so, and I've certainly been there, but I think that, really going into college, I became a lot more aware of my privilege, especially, when you see people from other walks of life. I think the other thing too is that what I do sincerely makes me happy. I love it, and I couldn't see myself doing anything else. And I think that a lot of people in life live their life according to what they believe they should be doing or what others, think that they should be doing. And it's amazing how there's this, especially with social media, there's this perception versus reality of these people are living, in these areas or doing this job and they act like they love it. And then you go and talk to them and they just are, absolutely, just miserable and they don't enjoy what they do. For me, I can't really see myself doing anything else. And I don't mean just in terms of work wise, like on a Friday night, I enjoy going to Plomo. I enjoy going to Conquesos and interacting with their customers and whatnot. And I think, Jeff Bezos, there's an interview that he talks about, everything that you do, there are going to be components that you're not going to enjoy. It's part of having a job. But if you can find something that you're really excited about at least 50% of the time, and the other 50% is stuff that, is admin things or, for me, I don't like admin things. Other people may like that. If it's all this stuff that you've got to deal with, if it allows you to be happy that other 50% of the time that you're working, then that's a win. For me, it's more of like a 90-10 split. 90% of what I do is really exciting and energizes me. And then there's 10% that it's like, oh my gosh, like I got people asking me about, they wrote in their wrong information on their payroll, on their bank account, and now they're upset because they didn't get paid. And it's like, all right, well, I don't know your account number, you do, and so I got to deal with things like that, but overall, I think it's just really easy to smile. One, whenever you're doing something that makes you happy. Two, whenever you're accomplishing your dreams and your goals and your passion. And then finally, when you finally acknowledge your privilege and understand that even though I may think that I have it bad, I don't have it that bad. And so the fact that we're here in the United States and that we have food, shelter, water, and whatnot, where we have two legs that we can use to walk around. I mean, that's something that whenever I'm running, I'm a big runner, and near like the final like miles that I'm running, I always really get myself amped because I just think about how privileged I am to even be able to run 8 miles like for fun, or for sport. And the fact that I have two legs that are able to move in motion, whereas there are people that can't even afford a wheelchair. It really warms you internally. At least it does for me.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. I think if more leaders really had that perspective, the world would be a better place for sure. And then I know with all of your global travels that you do, it makes you appreciate things even more. Just like you said, just the essential things that we kind of take for granted. Well, thanks for that perspective. Bring us up to date, if you don't mind, on your current ventures, kind of what's going on. I know you've got a new store that's going to be opening up pretty soon. Tell the audience a little bit more about just your new plans and what's out there. If you've got anything you want to reveal today, you can do that too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's funny you could ask. But so we've got Conquesos and Plomo quesadillas in Fayetteville. Those have done extremely well through the pandemic, and that's been really, really, really thankful for that, because most restaurant owners are not necessarily in that same boat. We had Juice Palm up in Bentonville. We recently ended our lease there and transitioned out of that business. It's something that I was extremely passionate about, but with everything that's going on with Conquesos and Plomo, we've kind of decided as a team to focus our efforts on the real winning horses, which Plomo has been an absolute home run, and we designed that by accident. So we're opening a new Conquesos location. Looking at opening a location of Plomo in the Knox-Henderson area of Dallas. We signed an LOI, and so hopefully, fingers crossed, nothing's certain, but it's looking really good. And so our hope is to follow our customer there. So we have a lot of University of Arkansas students that either are from the Dallas area or graduate and then move on to work in that Dallas area. And so we're hoping that we'll be able to have some brand recognition there and do well right out the gate. And then the final thing that I've been really getting into is real estate, and primarily doing a lot of investing in downtown Springdale. I have 5 residential properties here in Springdale. And I recently acquired a school building, the first Springdale High School, off of 800 East Emma. And we're actually in the works of putting together a larger project in that building to be a co-working facility that's tailored more towards minority and female entrepreneurs. And so that is going to be about an 18-month project. Right now, we're working on some of the designs, the preliminary designs. And once we get some renderings and things like that, we'll start a capital campaign. And so for anyone that's interested, co-working is an amazing business model. And it's going to be an awesome opportunity for entrepreneurs. You know, that school building was the first Springdale High School in Springdale. And so it was the place that people went to go get educated to be able to take on the world. We want to pay homage to that building by retaining a lot of the original architecture and making it a place for Springdalians to be able to get their start and be able to take on the world from a business perspective. And so I'm very excited about that. It's something I'm super passionate about in terms of empowering entrepreneurs and being in the entrepreneurial scene. And then, you know, hopefully it'll be a really profitable venture. I really like the business model of co-working spaces, and now more and more that I look into it.
Wow, that is really exciting. That's awesome. Congratulations on all those.
Yeah, for sure. Send out an email to all the Black Diamond people.
Yeah, we could do that for sure. For sure. That sounds good. So you mentioned briefly that Paloma was almost discovered by accident. What happened there?
Originally we looked at a space for or we were contacted by the landlord. There was a tenant that went out of this space on Dixon. And it was a perfect setup for, you know, Juice Palm. So we looked at it originally for that. And I noticed that there was a vent hood in a kitchen that was being unused in the back. And so I just really wanted to do this late night quesadilla concept for some time. You know, quesadilla was one of our top 5 sellers at Con Quesos. And it wasn't even, I mean, we weren't doing anything intricate with it. We just sold, you know, plain chicken, plain cheese, plain steak quesadilla. And it performed really well. And so we had this opportunity where we had this existing infrastructure. I think we put about an additional $5,000 into some equipment and some maneuvering of the space to make it available for like a pickup window out the side door. And, you know, we did that initially. It had no traction, but once the students caught word of it, it got really popular to where we were selling, you know, 400 quesadillas out the backside door of this restaurant on the weekends from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. And so when the pandemic happened, it actually worked out really well because we were already thinking about, you know, doing a renovation of the interior and terminating Juice Palm and opening up, you know, Paloma to take over the entire space. And so the pandemic allowed us to do that without really losing any customers. And it proved to be a really, really great transition. I mean, the Texas weekend, you know, this past football game against Texas, we sold 1,100 quesadillas in a single day out of a 1,200 square foot space. I mean, it's insane. But it all started with the $5,000 investment. You know, and in a way that I was just hoping that I could, you know, pay, you know, some of my bills or some of my travel expenses. And so it's been a really big blessing. You know, it's funny because, you know, with Con Quesos and Juice Palm, I did all this like thinking and research and put in all this time and effort into designing, you know, the logo and the menu and the branding and stuff like that. And Paloma was like a very like, yeah, like, let's just try this. Let's see what happens with this. And it's worked out really well. So we're going to see where it goes.
That is a great story, man. Congratulations on that too. That's
Thank
funny
you.
sometimes how that works out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, you're really making me hungry. I haven't had lunch yet, so appreciate that. So a lot of times people would say, hey, on your way to success, you're going to pass failure, right? And if you look at any successful person, I guess it's all a matter of perspective, but, you know, from athletes that we all know about, you know, Michael Jordan's story and things like that, and business leaders and stuff, even, you know, Jeff Bezos, right? I mean, every person that's in that quote unquote leadership position has a story or sometimes multiple stories about failure. What's been your biggest hurdle so far?
Yeah, you know, I think that the biggest hurdle that I've faced has been really figuring out what it is, you know, the model that works for us in terms of, you know, the business concept, the operations, things like that. You know, from Juice Palm to Con Quesos, you know, raising capital for that and or getting, you know, lending and things like that. It's always been, you know, a struggle. And it took, you know, up until Paloma, where I think, Juice Palm was a decent business model. Concase is a decent business model, but they certainly have their flaws and everything like that. Paloma like just seemed to come out of the blue and perform. It's a really simple concept, doesn't require a ton of prep, but it still allows us to have, a culinary flair on things. It's something that's super different and eclectic. I mean, that's really hard to do in the restaurant world. And so I think that, a lot of times people are scared of failure because they think that, there's a saying that like perfection is the one thing that gets in the way of innovation. And, people always want things to be perfect. And so, and if you wait for perfect, it will never happen. And certainly that's the case. The way that I perceive, going after things is not, succeeding and failing. It's just taking attempts. It's attempts and attempts shot and then shots made. And you only have to get one basket in for you to win the game. At the buzzer. And so, for myself, it's about just trying new things, seeing what works, and at least if it doesn't work out, you can say you tried it. And so we tried Juice Palm. It was a decent small business. It probably wasn't what I was looking for. And so we walked away from that. And with Paloma, it's been a blessing in disguise. It turned out to be a really great business model. And so you just gotta take what you learn, from something that doesn't work out and then apply it to the thing that does.
That's right. Yeah. Fail fast, right? Fail fast.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay. Talk for just a second about your vision and your culture and maybe how those things are intertwined. And more specifically, Omar, how do you successfully, implement your culture, knowing that you have multiple brands going on, you've got a philanthropic side to what you do and your entrepreneurship and all that kind of thing. And you've got to trust your employees. I mean, here you are with us right now in the middle of a busy lunch hour. You could be down at Conquesos or, Paloma or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you get that pushed out correctly so that your culture is really bought into, and then that allows you to trust your operations to run even when you're out doing other things?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think the big thing is that you just have to try and hire people that are genuinely good people, and I'm a big believer in, people say don't hire your friends. I'd say, become friends with the people that you hire. I try to treat everyone like family. And as a result of that, they treat the business as if it were the family business. And so I think that's extremely important. It took us a while to actually have, defined key values and things like that. But I mean, you have culture in your business, whether you have it written down or not. And I think that ours has always just been, again, that family style environment. We're really big on if better is possible, good's not good enough. And so our team's like really good about being able to take feedback and implement it because that's exactly how we were able to succeed with Conquesos. It's how we were able to succeed with Plomo and how we were able to succeed with Juice Palm, is we would take our customers' feedback and really try to implement it as quickly as possible. And so we're constantly trying to reiterate things. And then ultimately, it just comes down to, just putting people in a position to be successful. With our team, one thing that they understand is that there's not anything that I ask of them that I wouldn't be doing myself. And then if I ask them to do things, I make sure that they have the tools and assets needed and resources available to be able to do their task efficiently. There are times that, our employees will mention to me that they didn't get something done because of X, Y, and Z. And, my response will always be, well, let's get that thing, whatever it is that we need. If we need a piece of equipment, buy it. That's why you have a company card for it. If it's going to help you do your job, let's go ahead and get that done. Likewise, when we have new employees that aren't performing well, I try to, peel it back and say, okay, is it the person themselves that's not working out, or did we not put them in a position to be successful? And so that's something that I'm sure all of my team hates hearing all the time is, are you putting yourself in a position to be successful? Or are we putting this person in a position to be successful? Ultimately, you have to try to put people in that position and give them the resources available to succeed. But at the end of the day, too, if someone's not working out, We've terminated people, just because our A team, I call our A team players the people that have been with us the longest and our best employees. Like if they have a problem, if I'm hearing like, oh, so and so, didn't do this, or oh my gosh, like I really just don't like working with this person. It's kind of concerning. And whenever we let people go, we always tell them like, hey, this is in no way indicative of who you are as a person. Doesn't mean that you suck at your job, or that you're a sucky person. It just means that this is probably not the best fit for you. And sometimes people get upset with us, when we let them go, and for something as silly as, oh, these two people didn't get along with you. But my response is always like, well, hey, like just think of this, like you're gonna do so much better things at someone else's, in someone else's company, and you're going to excel, so I'm happy for you. So that's kind of the perspective that we take in terms of culture.
Yeah, that's good. Any advice for those that may be thinking about a path of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I'd probably say that until you get in the game, you're never going to learn. And so for a lot of individuals, they try to do all this research and development, and try to put themselves in a position where nothing could possibly go wrong, and that's just not reality. No matter how long you wait, whether you wait a year, you wait a month, the first product or service that you're going to put out there is going to be pretty terrible. And so you might as well get it out of the way really early on. And I like to, again, bring things into perspective. When you look at everyone's start, you mentioned all these individuals that failed Christian. When you look at any company, like you can look at any company that you absolutely love, like let's say that you love Apple. You can look at their history and see a lot of failure and a lot of things that went wrong, and then see their rough start, and see like, man, these guys started out of this starting point. It doesn't, all this stuff doesn't happen overnight. So you just got to embark in the journey, and eventually you'll get there. But to think that you'll be able to be well capitalized, that you're going to have all the resources available that you need, to think that your first product that you're going to put out there is going to be like a home run is just really wishful thinking. And so I like to say, bring it back to reality. Let's get in the game, get started, and then eventually, as you reiterate and provide a product based on feedback and things like that, you'll start to see this thing transition. But as far as doing that from the start, it's just not realistic.
We meet a lot of professionals that think they want to own a business, right? They've had a good job for a while, and they want to get out of the corporate world, and they'll call us and say, hey, I really want to buy a business, what do you guys have, and that kind of stuff. 9 out of 10 of them don't have the determination to do it. They see all the glamour associated with a successful entrepreneur, but they don't fully understand what it takes to get there, and the determination factor and all that. So there's very few people that I call it kind of the it factor. They have it, and they're willing to do the life you're living. And so I'm always kind of amazed by that, to be honest with you. But those certain type of people, they figured out a way to turn what should be done to what must be done. Because you can say, hey, you know what? I think I should do this today. I think I should swing by my business on Friday evening and just say hello to, what? I must do that. I've got to do that because I love it, and I'm going to get something from it, but I'm going to actually provide value for doing it. So I think that's a really, I can't just say thanks enough for all of those great attributes that you brought out. I'm going to stop recording now, and then we'll allow a little bit of time here for some questions if anybody has any. So 1 second.